Okay, well, it's 3:30, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Kelly Greenway, and I'm a functional nutritional therapist. I've been doing this since 2005. I started my journey of nutritional therapy, and I've always been interested in nutrition. My dad was a conventional medical doctor. He was a doctor of osteopathic medicine, which was a little bit less conventional, but still Western medicine. And I always knew that I was fascinated. I was always fascinated with health to the degree that I would look in his medical books and decide that I had all the diseases that were in there. So it was kind of disempowering because I didn't know what those diseases were. I didn't know what to do about them if I did have them. And I always kind of found that the more I knew about the body and how it worked, the more empowered I was just to control what I could control. So that led me to wanting to become something in the medical field. I didn't wind up going the Western route. I ended up marrying a chiropractor. And so then when we moved here, we bought a chiropractic practice that had a nutrition component to it. And she kind of led me through all these courses that the chiropractors were taking, and then they started a certification program for nutritionists, and I did that. And then I just couldn't stop learning because I felt feeling these deficiencies in what I knew. So I would start presenting to somebody how to eat, and then I realized, well, that only works if your body's working so well. So what happens if your digestion isn't working well, or you have some genetic illness or something? And it just kept fascinating me to the point where I studied to become a restorative wellness practitioner who studies labs. I understand how all the functional labs work. I looked at poop samples, I looked at urine samples, I looked at blood and hair and everything to figure out what's not right in the body. Because when the body is functioning well, it's functioning well. It's designed so well. It's got so many fail safes, to protect us. It's always trying to work in our favor. And so digestion is at the root of everything. And so that's why that's kind of what I base all of my work on, is digestion. If you don't get digestion right, then nothing's going to go right. So is this going to work for me today? Maybe not. That's not going to work. So let's do this. So just a disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor, and I'm not here to cure or treat disease. So if you do have anything serious, don't substitute my conversation for your doctor's medical advice. So digestive distress is so common today. If you haven't experienced something like this, like haven't felt bloated or had acid reflux or been constipated or felt tired after you're eating, I'm pretty sure you probably know somebody who has. And we've just we've decided that this is normal because so many people have these problems. So we think, well, this is just something we see all the time, so it's normal. And if you think that normal just means that a lot of people have it and that they have it very often, then you're right. It's normal, because they sure do. But it's not normal. Our digestion should be silent. We should be able to operate without having any discomfort in our digestion ever. We should should have bowel movements every day, once a day, and they should not be hard, difficult, and they should not be it should just be a seamless process. So, hi, thank you. Welcome. And so fortunately, there are a lot of things that we can do to restore good digestion. And so I'm going to explore some of those things that we can do. And I'm going to start with the things that we're all really familiar with because it's been promoted to us for a long time. Maybe. No, technology. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Your favorite food's fighting you. Fight back fast with Tums. Calcium-rich Tums goes to work in seconds. Nothing works faster.
And then here's another. They were a lot funnier. I think, I don't know, I don't watch TV anymore, so maybe there's funny drug commercials now, but.
When you get nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, even diarrhea. Hey, there's Pepto-Bismol. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Yay, Pepto-Bismol. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Yay, Pepto-Bismol. Nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea. Yay, Pepto-Bismol. Now you know, Pepto treats 5 different stomach problems. You see, paint does more than you think.
So it's really convenient that we have these things on the market because sometimes we have stuff to do and we don't have time at the moment to get to the root of the issue. But if we continue to use these things all the time, every time something comes up or we're buying this stuff at Costco, that's a sign that it's been going on for too long. So my approach is nutritional therapy. And my approach, well, my belief as a nutritionist is that our bodies are made divinely and they are made in a way that they will heal themselves. And we're designed to eat whole foods. And if we eat whole foods that aren't sprayed with pesticides, herbicides, and grown in, soil, mineral depleted soils, and we're not eating a bunch of packaged foods and a lot of things that we're sensitive to, then our bodies really do a great job of healing and repairing. But a lot of us aren't, there's something along the line that's messed up there. It's not working right. We're eating on the go, we're running, we're stressed, we're eating a lot of packaged foods because we're busy, and organic food is expensive, even though all food used to be organic. Now we have to pay more for it. So it's really hard to eat in a way that supports our body, but it's probably one of the most important things we can do because in the long run, if we don't, our bodies start to fall apart and then we're at the mercy of, drug interventions and other people who know how to take care of disease. So we want to do what we can to keep our bodies healthy. And it's really easy to get analysis paralysis in this world of keto, paleo, vegan, like all the diets. There's so many diets out there, and there isn't a single diet that fits every single person. People have different dietary needs. We came from different cultures, and our cultures that we came from ate in different ways. So we all have a little bit different nourishment needs. There are some diets that fit more people than others. But what's really important in all diets, no matter what path you choose to go, is that you're eating whole, nutrient-dense foods. So like Beyond Meat, that is not a whole nutrient-dense food. That's a packaged food. So somebody might have really great intentions and think that going vegan or vegetarian is a good idea, and they're eating things like Beyond Meat, and it's full of processed foods. So, we want to make sure that it's just coming from nature. And what we're mostly going to talk about today is optimizing digestion and then balancing blood sugar. We don't have balanced blood sugar. We're on this constant roller coaster all day long, and our body is in a crisis, fight or flight sort of state, trying to make up for our imbalanced blood sugar. So, if we're like eating a donut and orange juice and maple syrup and, bowl of cereal in the morning, then our blood sugar is going to skyrocket first thing in the morning. And then in reaction to that, insulin is going to kick in and our blood sugar is going to dive. And in reaction to that, our blood sugar is going to be too low for our pancreas or our liver to take its reserves and bring it back up. So what happens is the stress response comes in and cortisol raises blood sugar. So now we're using our fight or flight reserves, our stress reserves, in order to balance blood sugar. So if your blood sugar isn't balanced, then your hormones can get disrupted, you can have mood instability, all kinds of things can happen, but that's a different talk. So essential fatty acid balance, we were talking about that just a little bit ago. Your omega-3s, 6s, 9s, saturated fat, all of that needs to be balanced. And in addition to it being balanced, because that's a whole nother conversation, you need to digest it. You need to digest your fats well. And I'm going to tell you about how to do that and how that can go wrong. And then your mineral status. Minerals can be imbalanced with stress and with blood sugar imbalance and with lack of minerals in the diet. And finally, hydration. We just, sometimes we don't drink enough water during the day because we're on the go and we forget and we drink other things like coffee and then we don't get the water in. So digestion is a north to south process. It starts up here and it winds up down here. And we prioritize it in that order. So I want to ask you all, where do you think digestion begins? Anybody else? Saliva. Okay. Well, chemical digestion and mechanical digestion does start in the mouth, but digestion actually happens in the brain. So I'm going to start drawing for you now because I'm going to put together a whole picture of how this works. So
Is this to scale?
for a very small person, yeah. Well, she's as tall as me. She just has a little head. Okay, so digestion starts in the brain with the hypothalamus and the pituitary. The hypothalamus and the pituitary send messages down to the digestive organs, and they use a nerve called the vagus nerve. And you have a handout in that packet about the vagus system. So the vagus nerve is called the vagus nerve because vagus means wandering. And so it wanders from the base of the neck down the spine. And there are nerves in the spine that innervate all the organs. So the vagus nerve wanders down, gives information and collects information, and then wanders back up and tells the brain. So digestion can get disrupted in the brain. It can get disrupted from a car accident. It can get disrupted from a football injury, head injury, bicycle accident, a big life stressor that can disrupt the vagus functioning. And there are ways that you can repair that system. So, let's see. So we kind of talked about the state of stress, being distracted and rushed and being in an accident or being in an argument or having life stressors or just, just like doing life, like kind of just being on the go. This is a state of sympathetic dominance. That is not the optimal state to digest in. The state of receiving is a state of parasympathetic dominance. And so this is where our heart rate is decreased. We're resting, we're digesting. We can smell things. When we smell and we see beauty and we relax, our body is in a state of receiving. And this is the state that you want to digest your food in. So you want to, ideally, you want to have a sit-down dinner with people you love or with animals that you love, or or just yourself in some kind of restful state, ritualized maybe with candles or something, like that's ideal. And being able to breathe in and say some kind of prayer or gratitude. But we don't always find ourselves in that position. Often we're at work and we're sitting at our computer, or, we're driving somewhere. And so it's still possible to kind of put yourself in the state of relaxation, even if you're in one of those fight or flight sort of states. And that would be, you take your food that you're about to eat and just smell it. If you just smell it, you activate all those enzymes and all that digestive activity that happens in that parasympathetic state. So not having distractions, being calm and relaxed, seeing beauty, eating nourishing foods, chewing your food thoroughly. Those are all ways to get yourself into that parasympathetic state. When the vagus nerve is disrupted, it's a little bit more, there's more to do. And you can tell that the vagus nerve is dysregulated sometimes because we have all these different valves in our digestive system, so they can get stuck. Like sometimes people get food stuck right here, can't quite swallow it down. Or they get like kind of crampy right over here and they bloat every time they eat. And those are valves, and they're all connected to that vagus system. So when that's disrupted, there's a lot of things you can do. Like you can gargle, you can sing, you can hum, anything that makes vibration right here will stimulate the vagus nerve. Restorative yoga will calm the parasympathetic nervous system. Coffee enemas are a really amazing way to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And I was going to run you guys through a box breathing exercise, just so you know, because sometimes when you find yourself really amped up, box breathing is a way to bring yourself right back into that parasympathetic state. So we'll just stop right now for a second and we'll do go ahead.
Real quick, so like the digestive system could be, if you're not relaxed, can be tight. It's not open.
That's
the esophagus, for example.
Kind of like that, although it's, I think so. Like your muscles, that's kind of related to mineral balance, because when you're really stressed, a lot of times calcium will be pulled out of the bones into the tissue and it will stiffen muscles, and it will deplete magnesium. And so calcium contracts, magnesium relaxes. And so if you're in a state of stress, you might be more, and everything might kind of be more rigid. So in that sense, yes. And then what I'm referring to is, maybe this has something to do with that too, but the valves, like there's a valve right down here, and they just tend to kind of not work as well when that phase.
That's where large pills get stuck.
Yeah. So, okay, so everybody just close your eyes, and you're gonna take breaths in, and I'm gonna count, and then you'll take a breath. You'll stop, and I'm gonna count, and you'll take a breath out, and I'll count, and then you'll take a breath back in, and I'll count. So just chew my counting. Take a breath in. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a box breath. You're kind of drawing a box with your, you can imagine that you're going around the box, and it's really calming. And you can go through like, 10 of those when you're feeling a little amped up. So the most important thing to remember here is that you want to be in a parasympathetic state, or rest and digest. Now, what everybody thought, like the mouth is the port of entry to the alimentary canal, which is a tube that goes from the mouth to the anus. And it's a tube, it's a protected tube inside your body. Your body is protected from the things that are outside here and not in your body. When you put it in your mouth, you start to transform these foreign substances like steak or salad or whatever, you start to transform it into something that the body recognizes. So you're putting it in your mouth, and your taste buds are engaged. Your taste buds are connected to your nervous system, so they start to tell your body what's coming. Is it sweet, sour? Is it poison? Does it require hydrochloric acid from your stomach, or pancreatic enzymes, or bile from your gallbladder? So that nervous system action on the taste buds is really important. And then when you chew, you're breaking down the surface area of the food. So if you have like if you ate a McDonald's cheeseburger, it's going to go hump, hump, hump. You're not going to have to eat it and chew it very much. You can just pretty much take a few bites and swallow it. And a lot of people are really used to doing that, so they don't want to have something that has more substance because they would have to chew it too much, and they're not used to that. But if you're doing that, then it's just going down the tube and into your stomach like this, instead of being opened up inside your mouth and being exposed to all the enzymes that are in your mouth and getting that first exposure and mixture with the enzymes in your mouth. So, this works. Oh, it's working now. Okay, so much better. Okay, so once you chew your food, you turn it into a bolus. It's something it's your food mixed with the juices in your mouth, the enzymes in your mouth, and you swallow it. And this is really not going to be to scale in a minute here. This is not a neck. This is the esophagus here. So there's a valve here that separates from going down your windpipe, and then it goes into your esophagus. And then there's a valve down here. So when you swallow this bolus, that's what it is when it's mixed with the chyme or with the enzymes. It goes into your esophagus. And your esophagus squeezes at the top and opens at the bottom. Squeeze, open, until finally it lands in your stomach. Your stomach has all these cells that line it called pyloric cells, or, oh my gosh, I say this every single day to my clients and I'm blanking on the word. It'll come to me in a minute. There's cells that release acid. And the acid, so on a pH scale, 7 is neutral. And as you go down, every number that you go this way, the pH gets more and more acidic, like exponentially more acidic. It's not like 1 point more acidic. It's, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more acidic. So what we want the acid in the stomach to be is a 0.8 to a 1.5, which is so acidic it can melt a razor blade. When it's that acidic, the bolus melts into a substance called chyme. And the chyme just kind of settles in against those cells of the stomach. Chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. And the stomach is also protected by a mucosal layer that protects it from that kind of acid. So a lot of people have heard about you know, like, oh, we should be alkaline, we shouldn't be acidic. And they get all confused because everybody's talking about all the pH of the body, and every system in the body has a different pH. The blood should be a little more on the alkaline side, but the stomach should be very, very, very acidic. The esophagus isn't acidic. It doesn't have that mucosal lining, and the small intestine is not acidic. So the stomach is protected by this mucosal layer, and if it gets just disrupted, if it gets damaged, then we have ulcers. So we don't want that to get damaged. And things that damage the mucosal lining are, you know, taking too many antibiotics will reduce the gut immune system, and having an H. pylori infection is the most common reason for ulcers. H. pylori is a bacteria that lives in our stomach. It's like a rod-shaped bacteria. And so it will drill into the stomach and compete with hydrochloric acid. So it's a good idea to have really sufficient stomach acid. If you don't have sufficient stomach acid, then this bolus doesn't get fully broken down, and it rots, ferments, putrefies, makes its own organic acids, and it irritates this valve. And then the valve becomes compromised, and then you might get a little that goes into the esophagus, and that might make you cough, or it might come all the way up, and it will burn the esophagus. And so they give proton pump inhibitors. Those inhibit the proton pumps that secrete the acids so that you won't secrete acids, so that it'll stop irritating the esophageal or the esophagus. Because they're concerned about cancer, because if you keep irritating these esophageal cells, then you could get cancer in your esophagus. So it's really good that we have a way to stop this from happening. But if we continue to do that on a regular basis, then what's going to happen is we're not going to fully break down our food anymore, because now a problem that we already had has become worse. Now we have even more neutralized stomach acid. And so our proteins are rotting, our carbs are fermenting, our fats are putrefying. So, let's see if this works from here. Yes. Okay, so in order to maintain proper hydrochloric acid, we want to eat in that parasympathetic dominant state. We want to manage our stress, because stress depletes the nutrients that make hydrochloric acid. You can sip lemon water or apple cider vinegar before your meals. You can take digestive bitters that come in drops, and they're flavored, like they have chocolate bitters and orange bitters, you know, like any flavor you can think of, they probably have it. But you also, like a little caveat there, something to remember is if you're going to use digestive bitters, don't get one that has senna in it, because senna, you'll just become dependent on that, and it will eventually kind of make you potentially make you constipated, because you won't be able, you'll just be dependent on that senna for your motility in your gut. Another thing that I do with all of my clients, or anybody that needs it, we do a test and we find out how much hydrochloric acid they can tolerate. So we actually supplement with hydrochloric acid, and we figure out the client's exact dose so that they've got exactly the right supplemental hydrochloric acid to break down their foods.
Does that have to do with burping?
Yeah. Yep, sure. Okay, so here, there's another valve. It goes into the small intestine. And right here, we have the common bile duct. And over here, we have the pancreas. So when you have this really acidic chyme getting ready to go down into the small intestine does not like 0.8 to 1.5 pH. So the pancreas is triggered. The cells in the stomach sense that we have acidic pH, and they tell the brain to tell the pancreas to release bicarbonate. which is neutralizing. And so then the chyme can come down into the small intestine. And once it does come down into the small intestine, the pancreas releases enzymes. And so the enzymes, if the pancreas is burdened by too much consumption of sugar or eating too many dead foods, then it's not going to function properly and you're not going to have enough enzymes to break down your food. Then we also have signaling to the gallbladder. So your liver is over here and your gallbladder is over here. And your liver is filtering all of your blood. It's filtering toxins, it's filtering hormones, it's filtering medications, supplements, everything that you eat and all of your hormones. And it's using bile, and bile is like a detergent. So the bile is kind of scrubbing your blood through your liver, and then the bile lands in the gallbladder. Gallbladder is a bladder, it's a container for bile, so it holds bile. And it holds it there until you have fat present in the chyme, in your stomach. So if you don't ever eat fat, you don't ever exercise that gallbladder, because the brain tells the gallbladder to contract when it senses fat in the chyme. So we have to eat fat to have a healthy gallbladder. But like some people will be like, okay, good, I'm gonna go have some donuts, French fries, and because the nutritionist said to eat fat. But I don't mean that kind of fat, because your brain doesn't recognize that kind of fat. French fries are cooked in 400-degree oil that is already a denatured oil. It's a seed oil, like Wesson oil, and they don't change that fat over for 5 days, 7 days. So they've been frying stuff in that fat and heating it up 5 days to 7 days in a row. So it is not a food. It's like a poison, very much a poison. And I always pause on this point right here, because this fat digestion is probably the most important part of digestion, because every cell that makes up every membrane, that makes up every organ in your body is made up of, the membrane is made up of fat. So you have a cell, and the membrane is made of a phospholipid bilayer, which is 2 layers of fat. And then on the inside of the cell is your mitochondria and your DNA. Basically, the blueprint to making new you all the time. And your energy producer, mitochondria, produces your energy. So if your mitochondria get damaged, then you start to decay, you start to die.
How about cholesterol?
Yeah, so cholesterol, our bodies make cholesterol. They make cholesterol, and cholesterol is like it's a repairing substance. So it goes in and it repairs damaged things in our vessels. Our brains are made up of cholesterol, or hormones are made out of cholesterol. So cholesterol has gotten such a bad rap over all these years, and they're just starting to recognize that, well, first of all, the whole reason cholesterol became demonized was this one event. I mean, it's like this one event where there was a doctor or scientist, there was a president, and the president had a heart attack, and the doctor or scientist evaluated the president who had a heart attack and discovered that he had high cholesterol, and it was correlation, not causation. And then people just ran with it. Drug companies got a hold of it. You can really read a lot more. I'm totally botching the story, but it definitely has roots in kind of a shady, or like just kind of like, it was almost like a game of gossip sort of that got out of control. But even Western medicine doctors to some degree are recognizing now, if you eat eggs, it's not necessarily going to raise your cholesterol. There is a subset of the population that has a genetic predisposition to elevated cholesterol, and they are responsive to like eating eggs or butter, and they have to be a little bit more careful.
And what about if you don't have a gallbladder?
Don't have a gallbladder, this is what happens. So, okay, so when you eat fat, the gallbladder, there's a hormone. It's called cholecystokinin. I can remember that name, so it makes up for the fact that I'm not remembering the name of that. It makes the gallbladder contract and it releases bile into that common bile duct. So this is where the rest of the chemical digestion happens. When you don't have a gallbladder, the liver has a little connection to that bile duct too. So it does secrete a little bit of bile in to digest the fats, but not as much as, you know, if you ate a big fatty meal, you're not going to get an increase in bile in that common, or that fat right there, right in the intestine. So what happens is you don't get enough bile necessarily for every individual occasion that you eat fat. You might get enough on some occasions when you have a little bit of fat, but not every occasion. It's not absolutely specific. And the liver's dripping bile, and it has nowhere to go except this one little portal to the intestine. And so it tends to stimulate the intestines a lot. And people who have had a gallbladder removed they're the ones, like every time, not every time, but I would say 90% of the time I get an IBS client in my office who has to find the bathroom on road trips. They have to map out all the bathrooms because they're afraid that they'll land somewhere where they can't, you know, they're going to be in a position that's not comfortable. Those people have had their gallbladders removed. So very, very often it turns out being irritable bowel syndrome or IBS-D. And so what do you do about it? I recommend that people who don't have a gallbladder carry a supplement with bile salts in it. And I just call that the gallbladder in their purse. So whenever, or their back pocket, I don't know. So you would just like take the amount of bile salts in proportion to the fatty meal that you ate. And those have made a huge difference in a lot of people's lives that have had their gallbladders removed. The other thing that I would recommend for someone without a gallbladder is to do some repairing work to their intestines because it's been exposed to all of that corrosive bile. The bile doesn't belong on the intestine. And so sometimes that will kind of contribute to a leaky gut, which will contribute to food sensitivities. So,
Or candida?
yeah, well, it would be a real problem having, you know, it'd be more of a problem having leaky gut when you had candida, because then candida overgrowth in the gut, at least it's contained in that alimentary canal. But if it starts to leak through the gut into the bloodstream, now we've got a real problem. So that wouldn't be good.
A leaky blood is where things escape.
They escape that
Into
container.
the blood, and that's not good.
Yeah. So I'm going to really spell that out too. So your small intestines, you know, they're just crammed in there. If you stretched them out, they'd be as big as a tennis court. That's the analogy most, I think, 5th grade biology teachers use. And then, so they kind of are in there. And then over here is another valve. That's called the ileocecal valve. And it opens up into the large intestine. So the small intestine is the site of absorption. And this is a larger scale version of it. So on the inside, we have like a shag carpet. That's the cilia. The cilia is where your nutrients are absorbed. People who have celiac disease have autoimmunity. Their body is attacking that cilia and destroying it. And so it's destroying the site of absorption for them. When you chew well, you're in a parasympathetic state, your stomach acid is sufficient, your pancreas is working well because you're not overeating sugar or eating dead food, and your gallbladder is working well because you're eating a lot of really good fats and not bad fats, then you have very well digested carbs, proteins, and fats and nutrients in your intestine. And they get sucked up, these cilia. They have little tubes that suck up those nutrients. And here we have the wall of the intestine. The wall of the intestine is made up of cells, intestinal cells, enterocytes. And I like to think of those cells as soldiers standing on a wall guarding the village, which is the blood, from these, you know, potential community members. So these guys want to get to the blood. So they're getting sucked up through there, and then they're getting vetted at the junction between the two soldiers. So the soldiers are standing shoulder to shoulder, and they're held together by this glue. They're held very tightly together by this glue. And so only very small, well-digested particles can get through the cilia and that junction. And then eventually they're also vetted by a layer of immune cells, a mucosal layer on the intestine. You know, I should probably move this up. Huh? After all this time, it's probably better.
Now, when you say intestine, are you referring to both the small and large?
Well, right now I'm just referring to the small. This is the small, and so is that comfortable for everyone? So this mucosal layer is like a bunch of troops, and there could be 0 to like about 2,500 troops. It's pretty typical. White blood cells, kind of like a mucosal lining. And we want it to be about 1,500. If we were to look at a stool analysis, we would want that to be 1,500. If it's really depleted, then we don't have that layer of protection from what's inside here, like candida or bacterial overgrowth or food sensitivities. And if it's really amplified, then we've got inflammation, and eventually it will be depleted because we're using it all up. So this goes through, their passports are checked and everything, and then eventually it's cleared, and we are nourished by that protein, fat, carb, vitamin B, vitamin D, vitamin A, or whatever is in it. Now, if this isn't going well, you're always on the go, you're eating yucky food, bad fats, and lots of sugar and dead food, then you're gonna have larger particles of food in here. Not necessarily so large that you're going to see them in your stool. Sometimes you do, and there are some things that have like cellulose, like corn, that tend to always make it through and land in your stool. But this is just large enough that it's not going to be able to cram its way up the cilia. So first of all, you might just not digest it, and then it is going to land in your stool. You might not see it. If it's fat and it's large and it lands in your stool, then your stool will probably float. So if your stools float, you're probably not digesting your fat very well. But eventually it just keeps trying to cram its way through that cilia, and then it damages the cilia, and eventually some of it makes its way through. And that would be okay. It might not make it all the way through if these junctions are intact, if the glue is as strong as the glue started out. But things that make this glue less gluey are modern gluten, sometimes dairy, over-the-counter drugs, stress, too much sugar. And so a lot of us probably have some less gluey junctions or leaky gut. And so then some of these larger particles can get through. And just make sure I'm on track here. Okay. Our immune system is designed to tolerate things. It's designed to tolerate food. It's designed to tolerate the environment. It's designed to tolerate our own bodies. But if the immune system continues to get challenged by these things getting through the leaky gut and into the bloodstream, at first all it does is it recognizes it. It just says, oh, watch out for that corn protein, or watch out for that soy protein, or whatever protein that you're sensitive to. or was undigested, it just kind of flags it and says, watch out for that.
I got a question. Are you saying getting through the intestine
Yeah,
and it goes into your blood?
into your blood, yeah.
So that's that pretty serious?
It just activates the immune system. So some things that would be serious would be like if strep did that, or if, staph did that, or candida did that. There's certain things that are overgrowth bacteria that a lot of us have, but if they were to get into the bloodstream, it could
Is that the
be.
cause of, it's called diverticulitis or something like that? Is that
Yeah.
the same thing?
Diverticulitis is when there's like pockets in the intestine and things get stuck in those pockets, and then they kind of like rot inside, and then they
They're in the large
create
intestine.
inflammation.
So what causes that?
Lack of motility could cause it. Seeds can get into different places, and
Not enough fiber or something? like
maybe
that?
not enough fiber
What I was told was from straining.
from straining.
Yeah, because when you strain too much, you blow out,
Yeah.
it's like a balloon. You blow out that part of the large intestine.
And it's kind of like a hemorrhoid, like it,
Yeah.
in a
But
way.
it's a hemorrhoid on the inside of your
Yeah.
colon.
So, okay, so the immune system's tolerating it at this point. But when it keeps coming through and different things keep coming through, eventually the immune system is like, okay, we have to protect them from these things that are coming through. And so it starts to amplify. And then it gets dysregulated after so much time. It gets dysregulated, and then it loses tolerance for other things like yourself. So it will lose tolerance for your thyroid. It'll say, oh, your thyroid kind of looks like gluten. And then it goes and it gets the thyroid. Or your joints kind of look like this food protein, and then it attacks the joints.
The defense becomes more generalized
Yeah,
in a bad sense.
yep. And so so all autoimmune conditions have leaky gut as one of the
That's on.
three legs of the stool for autoimmunity. So you have to have a genetic predisposition, you have to have leaky gut, and you have to have a trigger. So the trigger could be gluten, it could be stress, it could be a death in the family, it could be like all kinds of different things. It could be a food sensitivity. So then, once you've absorbed everything over here, then, can you guys see that with this right here? Is this in the way? Okay. So then it moves on to the large intestine through this valve called the ileocecal valve. So one thing that can go wrong right here, especially if the vagus nerve is disrupted, is this can get stuck, open or shut. So if it gets stuck shut, then the stuff that was supposed to move on from the small intestine to the large intestine doesn't. And then it sits in the small intestine and it rots, ferments, and putrefies. So then it produces its own gases of hydrogen and or methane and creates a condition called SIBO. And usually when this is stuck, it's more constipation related and methane related. It can get stuck open, and then the contents of the large intestine backwash into the small intestine, and the small intestine was not designed to have that kind of bacteria in it. So, so that's called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And people who have SIBO tend to have like a lot of bloating for like whatever they do. If they drink water, they bloat. If they eat gluten, they bloat. If they, it doesn't matter what they eat, it bloats. Or they have lots of constipation or lots of diarrhea or alternating constipation and diarrhea. And it really depends on what kind of bacteria are in there and what kind of gases they're producing. Once you've absorbed everything you're going to absorb, then the unabsorbed thing, like the fibers, kind of move on along the large intestine. And then over here is where the majority of the bacteria live. And our bacteria is like, we're like the avatar for our bacteria. So our bacteria, they're like puppeteers, and we're just doing what they say. So it's really good to have a good makeup of bacteria. So we want a good population of the good bacteria, and we want an in-check population of bad or opportunistic bacteria. And so there's opportunistic bacteria that's inflammatory. There's some that is caused by not having good enough upper digestion. And just an overgrowth of those can cause all kinds of problems. So just reducing, if you do have an overgrowth of those kinds of bacteria in your gut, so you just do like a weed and feed sort of program where you weed the garden and then you feed those.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
But not with chemicals.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like oregano. Oregano is really good. Thyme is really good. Caprylic acid is really great for like yeast. And yeah, there's a lot. There's organ great. Lots of stuff that you can use. And then if you do a protocol like that, you definitely want to feed again because you want to grow those good beneficial bacteria because they compete with the bad ones. So, let's see what's there. Hydration helps the large intestine. The large intestine sucks up the water that you drink. Like I was talking about the coffee enema, like a lot of people think that sounds crazy. But caffeine, it stimulates, you absorb it really well through the intestine, and you're not stimulated by it the same way as when you consume it from your mouth.
Really? So you don't get the caffeine
You
kick?
don't get the caffeine kick.
Huh.
It stimulates the liver to make glutathione. I think it's like 7 times as much glutathione as it. Usually what a glutathione is antioxidant, and it's like the master antioxidant. So it's really healing. But you can also do enemas if you're dehydrated. So you can do just water enemas and just you can really absorb the water that way. If you're starting to get a flu or something, some kind of enema is a good way to help hydrate. And, eating vegetables, you can tell when you look at a stool analysis if somebody eats vegetables or not, because there's a certain kind of bacteria that likes to consume vegetable fiber, and so you'll see if that's elevated or depleted. And then probiotic supplements, you can take those, or you can eat, like sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented foods. Fermented foods have trillions of viable probiotics in them, whereas a shelf probiotic has billions of probiotics in it. And you don't know if it's really viable or not if you're just buying it from the grocery store. So eating fermented foods is really the way to go if you can tolerate them. There are some people that don't tolerate them. And those are mostly the people that have like SIBO, might not tolerate fermented foods. When your digestion is working well, you know when you're hungry and when you're full. You don't have any weird disconnect between your brain and your gut. And you have a healthy appetite. And you're not necessarily really picky. And you have bowel movements every day. Your energy is good. You're not tired after you eat. Because it takes a lot of energy to digest food. And if your body's just really struggling to digest, that really consumes a lot of energy. And your hair, your skin, and your nails look really good because you've digested the protein that makes all of those. You don't have very many food or environmental allergies because those are a result of this. And your mood and mental clarity are really stable, clear, and your immune system works properly because you haven't depleted it. 80% of your immune system is right here. So that's so important, especially in these days where we have so many things going around that make us potentially sick. So that's a wrap. And this is how you can get on the front page of your handouts. There's a QR code. If you ever want to dig into this stuff a little bit more personally, if you go to that QR code, it'll take you to my discovery session. And that discovery session is half an hour long. There's no obligation. It is $20 because I've had people just not show up. So I'm like, well, if you've got a little skin in the game, maybe you'll show up.
Yeah.
And so from there.
Yeah, I don't have a cell phone, so I can't.
Oh, you can't QR.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't get cell service
Did
with
I do
them,
it?
so.
Did I put my phone number on there? Maybe I just.
Yeah, so,
is our office number. It's Monterey Chiropractic.
Sure. So here locally.
Uh-huh.
There's more pins at the front.
Thank you.
Also on the fatty, fats, what's the good fats you go besides salad?
Sauerkraut's on there.
Avocado?
Avocado is good. Olive oil is good. I steal pens.
Oh, I stole this one. So.
Oh, good. It's karma. Avocado's good. Coconut oil's good. Lard is good if it comes from a clean animal. Duck fat, beef tallow, butter, ghee, all of those are good fats. The key is that it's minimally processed. So when we're talking about the fats that are in the conventional baking aisle of the grocery store, you see like those plastic containers, and they're sitting under fluorescent lights, and they're clear bottles. And first of all, those oils came out of a seed. So to get them out of the seed, they had to use really high temperatures. Oils destabilize, those kinds of oils destabilize when they're exposed to heat. And they get kinks in their chemical structure, and they pick up free radicals, and they become very toxic and damaging to the body. And so they extract that from the seed with heat. And then they don't get all of it out of the seed. And so they have to use hexane gas to get the rest out of the seed. And then the oil stinks. So they have to deodorize it with some kind of chemical. And then they pour it in this plastic bottle that has BPA and hormone disruptors in it. And then they sit it under fluorescent light, and it's also sensitive to light. So by the time it makes it there, well, before it ever made it there, it was not really good. By the time it makes it to the store, it's just, one chemical away from plastic.
So what you're saying then is it'd be better if I'm buying oil that it should be in a dark container bottle or in glass.
Yes. And in glass, ideally, like dark in glass. Would be ideal.
In a perfect world.
In a perfect world, yeah,
And not a seed oil.
and not a seed oil. So
Which
that-
leaves out canola.
Yeah, canola is just terrible, really bad.
We used to
Canola,
get a lot of hype.
it did.
It
And
did.
a lot of times the hype comes from a need to sell something, like you've got an
Yes.
extra little bit of something, and so you're like, oh, let's just market it well. And
Yeah,
everybody's like, oh, I want to do stuff that's good for me, and
Yes.
TV's telling me that's good for me, so,
yeah, that's why it's so important that we're our own physician.
yeah.
Is the colon synonymous with large intestine?
Ask that again. I'm sorry.
Colon
Is it synonymous?
synonymous with large intestine.
Like colon, large intestine, same thing.
Oh, okay.
So you're affiliated with Monterey Chiropractic, you said?
Correct.
You said that one of the best things for constipation is fermented foods.
It can help, for sure, yeah.
And you basically need these various analysis to really determine where your gut is at.
Yeah, so when I take a client through, I have I either work with people, I work with people on one-off appointments and kind of go over their symptoms and stuff, and I use a lot of subjective information, just symptoms that they told me about to help them. And I also kind of help them dial in diet and things like that. But somebody who's coming to me, I work with a lot of autoimmune conditions, and for example, I have a young man that I'm working with right now who has multiple sclerosis. And he's 26 years old. He came in, he was having 45 episodes of spasms in one side of his body every day. He's really fatigued. And this was just kind of starting to interrupt his life. And his grandmother had really bad MS. So he saw what it looked like. She was in a wheelchair. And so for him, we took out all grains, we took out all dairy, all gluten, and kind of loaded him up kind of on a paleo sort of diet is what we chose. And then we assessed his food sensitivities. So we did a food sensitivity panel, and we figured out what his specific food sensitivities were. And then we gave him a very, very, very limited diet for a week of just the foods that absolutely very little triggered him, the very least. And then the next week we added a little bit in more that just kind of triggered him, but that didn't really trigger him. It was like it's rated like green, yellow, red. So it was a green still. So these are all greens. We added like the lowest greens, then a little bit higher greens, then a little bit higher greens, and a little bit higher greens until we had more food into his diet. And about 3 weeks into that food journey alone, and we're doing a whole lot more with him, but 3 weeks into the food journey alone, he's completely in remission just from removing those triggers of the food. So the food's powerful, but then we looked at his, what I do is I always start with digestion. So if somebody really wants to get into it, we do food sensitivity, we do a GI map, which is a stool analysis. So we look to see if, are there any overt pathogens like candida, bacteria, fungus? And then is there bacterial overgrowth? Is there bacterial undergrowth? What does this look like? What does this immune system look like? And is there leaky gut? And then we go and we remove all the food sensitivities and we eradicate all the overgrowth and we grow all the things that are undergrown. And we do a blood test too to see what's going on there. And then at the end, we retest all of that, except for the food sensitivities, because they pretty much stay the same, they just reduce. So.
Now, older men, have large, often large prostates and EPH. And this, how does that relate to your talk?
Well, so zinc has a lot to do with prostate health. Zinc has a lot to do with digestive health. When you're not digesting well, you're not absorbing your zinc very well. And if you don't have enough zinc, you're not digesting very well. So it's this vicious cycle of not enough zinc, not digesting well, not enough zinc, not digesting well. And so that really, that's a big piece of prostate health. Also the fat digestion. So any of our endocrine organs all of our endocrine organs are highly dependent on good fat digestion. So the fat digestion would play into that. So these are all really upstream to, the prostate, but definitely important.
How would you know how much zinc to take?
Well, there's a couple different ways. One of the functional tests that I do in my office is I have a liquid zinc. And so I'll have people I'll put a little bit in a cup and I'll have them swish it around in their mouth. And if they can't taste it at all, then they're very zinc deficient. So they'll be like, what? It tastes like water. And I might have like a husband and a wife, and one of them will be like, oh, spit it out. The other one will be like, what? And so the one that's saying what is the one that is really zinc deficient, and the one that's spitting it out, they have enough zinc, so they're tasting the zinc and the zinc. And so what I have the zinc deficient person do is just keep drinking the zinc. Like every day they drink the zinc until they taste it. And then we supplement with a high dose of zinc, and then we start titrating that down to a more moderate dose of zinc and just stabilize with that. Another way to check zinc levels is to look at hair analysis. So you can see all the minerals for hair analysis. And zinc and copper have a really intimate relationship. So you never want to, zinc seems so benign and so innocent because it's sold everywhere when we get sick. Zinc lozenges, but if you just take zinc all the time, then you can throw off your copper and really need your copper for adrenal function.
Can you go back to that statement you were talking about for the people who don't have a gallbladder? We're talking about a tablet? What are they called?
It's
Again.
ox bile.
What is it called?
Ox bile.
Huh.
Or some people call it bile salts. And in that packet, you have a handout. Did I put that in there? Yeah, I think I did. For gallbladder salad.
Yes.
Yeah. So what that does is it's got vitamin C from the carrots and the lemon juice that's on it, and it has beet juice from the beets. And then the fat stimulates the gallbladder, which if you don't have one, this is a little different, but the fat stimulates the gallbladder, but the beets and the carrots help thin the bile. So even for someone who doesn't have a gallbladder, thinning the bile isn't a bad idea. But what happens when the gallbladder doesn't squirt is the bile sits in there and it gets really thick. And so you can thin the bile with this salad if you, like I just have people make a bowl of it and then put a couple tablespoons with their meals. And it helps thin the bile so that your bile flows a little bit better.
Thank you.
Any suggestions on how to get off sugar?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sugar's like worse than
It's like
crack, you
cocaine.
know, like it's
like cocaine.
just really, it's really addictive. Some people, it works to go cold turkey, you know, I have a lot of clients that I'm like, okay, this is what you're gonna do for the next 30 days. You're gonna have no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, nothing that tastes like sugar, no stevia, nothing. And so you retrain your palate so that all of a sudden a green apple tastes really sweet. And so just that works, but if there are some people that just, they can't do that, just isn't their style. Cold turkey is not their style. So there's an herb called gymnema, Gym, N as in Nancy, EM as in Mary, A. And gymnema is really great because one, we have to get a really good quality one. I sell it. I'm not trying to sell it right now, but I do. There's a liquid kind and there's a tablet kind. The liquid kind, you can kind of put some in your mouth and it will anesthetize your sweet taste buds. So that for the next 3 hours, if you eat a candy bar, it will taste like wax.
Really?
Yeah.
Spell it again.
Gym, N as in Nancy, A.
GYMNA.
Oh, and then it's like a party trick in that way. Like sometimes I'll do a talk on sugar and I'll bring some of that and give it to people and we give them a candy bar. And that's really fun. But it also, gymnema has been shown, if you take it for 9 months, to regenerate the beta cells of the pancreas. That's like unheard of. So that's kind of like a reversing of diabetic tendencies in the pancreas, the diabetic effect on the pancreas.
After 9 months, it does what?
It regenerates the beta cells of the pancreas. So they call it the diabetic herb. But non-diabetic people can take it. And it doesn't make somebody hypoglycemic, like it doesn't depress your blood sugar so much that you'd be like, whoa, why did I take that?
You said, if you, after you eat, if you feel tired or sleepy, could it also be because you ate too much?
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
I mean,
so.
you're eating the right stuff, but maybe you're eating too much of it and it makes you.
For sure, there's actually a lot of reasons why you would feel, I mean, at least a few reasons why you would feel tired after you ate.
But if you felt a little bit tired, it's okay. I mean, because your body.
Your body's turning all the resources to digestion,
Right.
but if you're just like, I just feel better when I don't eat. You know, and so some people just don't eat because when they have stuff to do, they feel better when they don't eat.
And the extreme is fasting.
Yeah, so fasting's good, it's a good tool. But yeah, so if like 2 hours after you eat, or maybe an hour after you eat, sometimes it's a blood sugar thing. So if you ate too much in sugar in your food, you can become tired afterwards. It's called postprandial narcosis. So you just get, just kind of, all your insulin is kicking in, and so that's making you tired.
How about a little bit of use of honey? If you want to sweeten something.
Yeah, I mean, that's
not
honey
quite
and
as bad.
grade B or dark maple syrup and coconut sugar. Those are all really great unrefined forms of sugar, and they all have minerals in them still. So sugar strips minerals from our body, refined sugar, but when you have unrefined sugar, then it has the minerals, so it repletes the minerals. You know, it's giving back when it's taken away. But when I take away sugar for a person, I'm just doing it for 30 days just to recalibrate their taste buds so that when they do taste sugar, they're just like, whoa, that's what sugar tastes like?
Is it monk fruit or something?
Monk fruit.
The sugar?
Monk fruit is really low glycemic. It's a really great substitute for some people, and some people it causes digestive distress. I can't do monk fruit. I see all these things that are like keto cereal that's like the Fruit Loops I ate when I was a kid. Like, that would be good. I want to try that. And there's no sugar. And I know it's garbage because it's processed anyway, you know, but it's got monk fruit in it, so I can't even try it because I'll just be like, ugh.
And then stevia? Or-
Stevia has been really debated lately. The thing about stevia is that it's a plant, it's an herb, it's actually bitter, so it doesn't do what all other things that taste sweet do to our pancreas. So it doesn't elicit an insulin response. So stevia in its pure form is good, but stevia cut with sorbitol or, you know, some cut with stuff, you gotta
That's why
watch
it's
for that.
expensive.
Yeah,
Good
or
stuff.
bleached,
It's, good stevia is pretty expensive.
probably, yeah, I think so. I haven't bought it.
Coconut oil, I used to use that ever so often, and then I heard or read that it was not as, it's too much fat, so it's not good for you after all. What's your opinion on coconut oil?
I don't, yeah, I don't know. I think I heard those things come out too. I don't agree.
It's okay to cook with it and so.
Yeah, what you want to cook with is always like that stable saturated fat. You don't want to cook with olive oil, even though it says high temperature. You
Oh,
want to
really?
drizzle it on
You
after
don't
the
want
fact.
to
Unless you protect it. You can protect it with a little coconut oil and butter or ghee, and then it will protect the
Because the
olive oil
burn
fats.
point, the flash point's too hot.
So if you take coconut oil every day, you think it's okay?
Yeah.
How about almond, avocado oil?
That's been debated a lot too, because they say that it gets rancid really easily, and so they're saying that there's a couple brands that are okay, like the Chosen brand, I guess, is a good one. You can find that at Costco. I still use avocado oil. I think it's a really great thing to make mayonnaise with, because most mayonnaise is soybean oil. And even they'll say made with olive oil, and then you'll look at the back and be like, either
Yeah.
soy or canola, and then a
Olive
little bit
oil.
of olive oil.
It's the fifth thing listed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an olive oil mayonnaise, but it tastes very good.
So you can't cook, how about can you cook with olive oil at lower temperatures or
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're like under
like
350,
stir fry or?
it's just recommended more. It's a really good oil to consume. It's an omega-9 oil. It's that Mediterranean polyunsaturated fat, you know, it's really good. But just really good to just use liberally as dressing and something to drizzle over the food you've already cooked.
So it's better to cook in fat or,
Yeah, I think ghee is my favorite.
how about duck fat?
Duck fat's amazing. It's like the gold of fat. It's so
Really?
good.
Because I bought something else with that.
Where did you get it?
Super One or Winter
Really?
Ridge. If you look for it, you find it almost everywhere.
I have a question about something you mentioned earlier. We were talking about calcium and magnesium. You said calcium pulls out of the bones into muscle tissues when you're stressed. Okay. And you mentioned calcium and magnesium. Which one was is it retractor?
Yeah, calcium is the contractor,
Okay.
and then magnesium is the relaxer. And what happens with that stress response is it's called, I like to call it spark plug burnout, because you're stressed and your bank for mostly your calcium and your phosphorus is in your bone. And so your bone is the bank. And whenever you're stressed, you have to go borrow from the bank, you borrow the calcium. And then the calcium comes into the tissues, and when the calcium's in the tissues, it hardens things. So it causes bone spurs and cataracts and joint problems, and anything that gets hardened in your body is likely has a calcium connection. And so what happens is you have to recruit magnesium, because magnesium is like an antidote for calcium. And the adrenal glands, which are your endocrine organs that are involved in fight or flight or get up and go, they depend on good magnesium supply. And so it shuts off the magnesium supply to the adrenal glands, and then the kidneys, like the hormones that do that, make the kidneys excrete sodium and potassium, and those are your spark plugs. So then you get this adrenal fatigue.
How about almond milk and raw milk?
If you can tolerate dairy, I think that raw milk is the best version of milk. And if you can get like Jersey cow raw milk that's A2, that's the very best. And goat milk is very often A2 milk, if not always.
Do we need dairy milk?
I don't think we need
Yes,
dairy
just
milk.
about it. How about that again, almond milk?
Almond milk, if you make it yourself, is really good. If you get it in one of those Tetra packs, like the square boxes that are shelf stable, then it has, it says fortified with vitamin D, but it has vitamin D2.
How about the brand Califfa or whatever?
Yeah, same. It's all, those are, it's like a really you have to pay about $8 to $12 for an almond milk for it to really be a good one. We
Really?
have some that has no preservatives, it doesn't last very long. It's in the refrigerator section, maybe that one, but I think it's fortified with the vitamin D2, which is actually toxic. And the carrageenan and all that stuff.
What about oat milk? Try that
Oat?
out.
Oat milk? Oats, the grain, I believe that if we don't feed something in our diet, it would be grains. So when it's a grain, it's very processed, and the container that it's in, it's got stabilizers, the fake vitamin D or the D2. And I don't think it's very good, but
Yeah, I just bought it because it's supposed to help your cholesterol. Oatmeal,
Yeah.
so I figure oatmeal must be just as
I think
good.
the oats themselves, like that fiber, it's like what the good quality of oats, but I drink oat milk sometimes because I know it's not optimal, but sometimes I'm not doing so great with dairy and I want a latte or something, and I hate almond milk lattes and I hate coconut milk lattes. And so I'll just be like, okay, an oat milk latte.
So if
You just
need
can't
a
win
little-
sometimes.
If you need a little, the Nature Path cereals.
Yeah.
They have very little wheat, and have all the other, so it's preferable if you're gonna have to put milk in there to use raw milk instead of almond milk.
Yeah, if you tolerate dairy, definitely, because that's a nutrient
So
dense.
it looks like it's after raw milk.
Yeah. Yep.
The farm store,
Yeah. Do they sell?
they used
Or
to.
the Selby Valley Creamery, do they sell it?
I don't know.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you on the almond milk. I'll have to-
Yeah, it's easy to make. Easy
Really?
enough, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just
Oh,
in the
blend
blender.
almonds in a blender with some good water and a little pinch of salt. Maybe a little bit of vanilla and strain it through cheese.
I have a vitamins.
Yeah, it's the best.
Really? So it's just the expense of the almonds as well.
Mhm. Well,
Very
thank you
fascinating.
guys.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.